So I need to
Put the
know.
handcuffs
I need
back
to
on.
know. What do you know about aliens, and how are aliens real?
Can we combine both?
I keep coming back to that
we do it?
because I want to know.
You wanna do
What
it?
do they know about aliens?
What do you want me to tell you?
What are they real?
Okay, I'll tell you right now. And what I say is not political, and it's not from my particular
Okay.
perspective.
Okay.
It's from the known knowledge in the universe.
Okay.
We live in a third-dimensional plane. We can see the planets, the galaxies, the suns, hundreds of billions of galaxies photographed, universes. We live in an amazing space-time continuum. The elites believe that it's not in the third dimension that we're mainly receiving transmissions. Ships don't arrive from Alpha Centauris or Giedi Prime or wherever they're coming from, or Betelgeuse. They come here through interdimensional gates that are much closer, through fold space. And so we have to discuss the different influences that are in the universe and our fact that we have free will and we decide what we want. I don't believe in any of this. I'm simply telling you what the elites believe.
So they believe that there's another dimension, and these beings are from another
bunch of
dimension.
dimensions.
A bunch of dimensions.
And they need.
This is actually pretty big. Alex Jones is stating that aliens do in fact exist. He is stating that aliens exist. However, aliens do not come from another planet from outer space. Aliens are living amongst us here on Earth, not in a third dimension, but in another dimension. To understand the possibility of aliens living in another dimension, we need to first understand how other dimensions function. The next video is Neil deGrasse explaining the second, third, and fourth dimensions. Listen carefully to how the fourth dimension functions and how it would be possible to serve as a home for aliens.
Here's the example. We've got a nice broad desk we hear at this interview, right? So desk is 2 dimensions. It's got length and width. And I can start putting papers on this desk, and I can lay them out mosaic style. And then all of a sudden I have no more room to put a sheet of paper. I have exhausted the 2 dimensions of the surface of my desk. If I'm an ant living in this surface of the desk, the ant will say, there is no more room. And I say, yes, there is. Watch me. And I can put an organizer and stack things vertically. So I can take a sheet of paper, and now I can put it higher up than the surface of the desk. The ant will say, where did it go? Oh my gosh, it disappeared in some portal. Where? No, what is that? It disappeared into a dimension that ant does not have access to. It went into the third dimension, and the ant bound to, ant obviously is a three-dimensional thing.
Right.
Imagine it only lives in 2 dimensions. You would have made that paper disappear into a third dimension, and it will have no clue where it went, because you had a portal, you had access to that extra dimension. So look at how much you can store on a desk when you have access to a third dimension above it. Vastly more than just papers mosaiced out on the surface. So now let's up this example by a dimension. You're storing boxes in a room. Oh, I ran out of room. But now a 4-dimensional alien looks at us and says, I got this. Just move it into the 4th dimension. What are you talking about? And the alien comes in, reaches in, takes one of the boxes, and then the box disappears. Disappears. It went into a 4th dimension. That is a portal to a 4th dimension that can hold vastly more content than what you're stuck storing in the 3-dimensional space of your room.
Now that concept,
that's a brilliant concept. And even though it has monsters that don't exist, that all speak English, and one of them is a cyclops, and one of them is I'm not judging the biophysiology of these creatures, but they got the physics of 4-dimensional portals completely accurate. This doorway is a portal through the 4th dimension and then back to the 3rd.
Towards the end of the previous clip, Neil deGrasse explained how the movie Monsters, Inc. got the concept of the 4th dimension correct. The doors in the movie serve as portals between the 4th and 3rd dimension. Just how he explained that the 2-dimensional ant was bound to the 2nd dimension, the ant could not see or enter the 3rd dimension. So for humans, which are 3-dimensional beings, are bound to the 3rd dimension. Therefore, they cannot see or enter the 4th dimension. In another podcast, Alex Jones further discusses aliens. Alex Jones only uses the word alien to define an outwardly being, while also referring to it as an interdimensional being.
Well, obviously, we've got 3 dimensions we're living in, but they've proven with these spectrometers that NASA has that there's dark matter that's 5 times more powerful than the matter we're living in. And so there is an outside force. That's why even the head of Bank of America said, we're held captive by some outside force. So these guys that tell you there's no God, there's no devil, there's no spiritual stuff going on, that's just ancients realizing there's more than what we can see in the limited band of our vision. It's like not even 1% of what's happening. And so there are multi-dimensions.
We can understand 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
But it's proven that there's more than 3 dimensions.
That's right.
Right? Like space is a 4th dimension.
There's 12 dimensions.
Right. Okay. So, and I guess the idea of understanding space as a 4th dimension is like, if you kept on going that way in space, eventually you would wrap around back to where you were. And then there's a 5th dimension, a 6th dimension, etc. So you think that there are beings that exist in more than the 3 dimensions that we exist in?
That's right. Like an elevator, they're able to go up and down.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, you've got the...
Explain it to us dummies that don't understand.
Well, no, I mean, definitely there are... Aliens don't come here on spaceships from 1 trillion miles away. They're interdimensional, wormholes, whatever you want to call it. And the mathematics shows that they're able to come into our dimension, leave our dimension, and that the 3rd dimension is kind of a base launch pad of the basics of the higher dimensions. And so the 3rd dimension is the 1st dimension that has real intelligence and is able to evolve.
Okay.
And so we kind of live on the basic plane of everything that's built at the foundation on this planet. Our planet itself is more like just a jumping off point. And it's not just for us. There's a lot of stuff that comes through here. I mean, we're kind of like in the middle of a major traffic jam with just entities and systems and ideas. Okay. We are creatures that live here and have a very limited spectrum of color and light. That's it.
Yeah.
And so everything, and I'm not putting this down, but we get this. But they now know with spectrometers and all the mathematical analysis, there's stuff below us and above us and all around us. So that's why it's such a joke. It's all about energy.
Could there in fact be another dimension where interdimensional beings live? So, I have done some deep research and found the closest possibility that confirms Alex Jones' interdimensional beings. What Alex Jones is referring to as an interdimensional being can in fact be compared to what the Holy Quran refers to as a jinn. The definition of jinn in the Quran in Muslim tradition, a spirit often capable of assuming human or animal form and exercising supernatural influence over people. Keep in mind how Alex Jones described where interdimensional beings live, as well as how Neil deGrasse explained how 4th dimensional beings interact with the 3rd dimension. In the next clip, Dr. Yasir Qadhi explains jinns and how they interact with our world, in the context of the Holy Quran. Listen for the similarities between jinns and interdimensional beings. For the context of this video, we're only going to focus on the dimensions.
The jinn are simply as they are. They are in a world that doesn't have structure. And that's why for our minds it's difficult to encompass, to come across. They don't occupy the 3-dimensional world that we live in. They have a totally different parallel universe, quite literally. You know, they are here, yet they're not here. They are in this world, yet they are in a separate world apart from our eye. That humans, all of them, can see the jinn if and when the jinn wants to reveal himself to the human. So the jinn has to desire to reveal himself. You cannot enter the world of the jinn, but the jinn can enter your world.
Dr. Yasir Qadhi explained, jinns live in a dimension that humans cannot see nor have access to. However, jinns can see and enter the 3rd dimension. The jinn sounds very similar to Alex Jones' description to interdimensional beings, and Neil deGrasse's explanation of the 4th dimension. I believe I have found the answer to Alex Jones' interdimensional being. The answer that explains his theory and confirms it is the jinn. However, for this video, I do not want to get too deep into the description of the jinn. I just want to focus on dimensions. The next clip is a detailed explanation of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th dimension. Understanding the concept of the 4th dimension is the very foundation of understanding interdimensional beings. Without understanding the 4th dimension, you will not understand the series of videos.
Suppose you have a sphere, and I live in a 2-dimensional world, and you take this hollow sphere, so it's a shell, and you pass that sphere through my two-dimensional universe, how will I describe that?
If a three-dimensional sphere entered that world, all the flat creature would see is the two-dimensional cross-section, or a circle. If the sphere said, hey, I'm a three-dimensional object, and the flatlander said, prove it, move in this third dimension you speak of, all they'd see is that cross-section gets smaller.
This would be completely freaky to a two-dimensional being. But it makes complete sense if you live in 3 dimensions and you pass a sphere through my universe.
I mean, if there was some two-dimensional world living on this piece of paper, I could see everything that's going on and there's nothing they could do to hide from me. Then if I wanted to at any point, I could enter their world, but all they would see is the two-dimensional cross-section of my fingers in this case. And this is exactly how it'd be for a 4-dimensional object visiting us. They could see our 3-dimensional world, and there's nothing we could do to hide from them.
In fact, you would never be able to hide anything in our 3-dimensional world from a 4th-dimensional being. Everything would be present at the same time. They'd immediately be able to see what is inside this box.
They could then enter at any point, and we would see a 3-dimensional cross-section of that object. So if it was a 4-dimensional sphere, for example, we would see a 3D sphere just appear out of nowhere. It would get bigger and bigger, then smaller and smaller, and eventually disappear. See, our brains aren't really made to understand how that object is moving through that higher dimension.
So it would be quite amazing to see some 4th-dimensional thing moving through our 3 dimensions and making things reappear, change shapes, do all sorts of different things, even making mirror images of things.
So, who is to say that some of the mysterious things we are describing accurately, but don't otherwise make sense in a higher dimension? And these are just the manifestations of higher dimensional phenomena in our world.
4th-dimensional beings could suddenly appear and disappear in our space, could make objects randomly appear and disappear, change shape altogether, turn you into your own mirror image of yourself. These are critical attributes to keep in mind when we learn about interdimensional beings. If there are beings living in another dimension, we cannot see them and we would not be able to access them. However, for the 4th-dimensional being, they would be able to see and access us. This is the key takeaway from this video. We have uncovered where interdimensional beings reside and how they interact with the 3rd dimension. Who are these interdimensional beings? The next video of the series will describe who these beings are.